Welcome back to Super Recaps. Today I will recap a drama film from 2007 called Normal. The movie first starts by introducing us to Catherine, who is still mourning the death of her 16-year-old son, Nicky, who died in a car crash. In the following scene, Catherine sees her husband Dale off for work and hands her son Brandy a jacket after seeing the weather forecast. Once she is alone at home, Catherine feels unrestful and calls her husband to remind him about dinner, but Dale rudely tells her not to call him when he's at work again. The scene then shifts to a college professor, Walter Brower. An attractive student called Sherry comes up to him and says that she couldn't complete her essay because she was busy with work. Then, we see a young boy, Jordy, at a youth detention center, where he refuses to play basketball with the other inmates. Someone then hits him with a ball, resulting in Jordy getting into a fight. Next, we see Dennis, an autistic boy who is currently panicking after receiving a phone call from someone. He calms himself down by reading some mathematical text. Meanwhile, Catherine and Dale are having dinner with their friends, but Catherine starts acting weird and refuses to eat the barbecue meat, which annoys her husband. Later that night, Jordy's sentence is over, and his father picks him up, but they end up getting into an argument about his father's new wife, Elise, whom Jordy refuses to acknowledge as his mother. His father then tells him that his sister, Carly, is much better than him. In the next scene, Dale brings Catherine home and puts her to bed. He then comes across a newspaper cutout about their dead son and goes to comfort a crying Catherine. The next day, Jordy tries to strike up a conversation with his father, but his father doesn't care and just asks him to find a job within a week, or else he'll be kicked out of the house. His father then leaves for work, and his stepmom Elise tries to console him by saying that his dad missed him while he was in jail. Meanwhile, Dale needs to leave for work, but Catherine is still sleeping, which annoys him, and he tells her to get her act together and take Brady to school, as he can't do everything himself. Catherine listens and gets ready to drop their son to school. In the next scene, we find out that Walter is Dennis' brother, and he hands Dennis his mail, which Dennis reads before falling asleep. Walter then checks the letter that Dennis was reading and sees that it's from some girl called Sylvie. When Walter asks about her, Dennis explains that she is a friend who wants to see him. Walter thinks it's a good idea, but Dennis refuses to meet her. Walter then visits his therapist and talks about his life. He says that everything went downhill when one day he dropped his brother to therapy and then went to a bar where he got drunk and ended up forgetting about his brother. When he finally remembered, he rushed into his car to pick him up, but because he was drunk, he crashed into another car, which led to the death of Catherine's son, Nicky. The scene shifts to Catherine, who visits her son's grave and then goes to the supermarket to do some grocery shopping. When she returns home, she goes to Nicky's room to admire all his basketball awards and ends up crying while lying in his bed. Brady then shows up and asks her if he can go play with his friend Alan, but Catherine coldly refuses. Meanwhile, Jordy is giving a job interview at a pizza restaurant, where the owner asks him a few questions and then inquires about his time in jail. After Jordy explains that it was because he stole a car, the owner agrees to give him the job. On the other hand, Dennis finally picks up Sylvie's call and informs her that he doesn't want to meet anyone. After that, Walter goes to have dinner with his wife, Abby, but they don't talk much. In the next scene, Jordy is pleasuring himself in his room, and his stepmother accidentally walks in. Jordy then goes out to meet his old friend and Nicky's girlfriend, Melissa. After inviting him to a party, Melissa advises him to meet Nicky's mother, Catherine, but Jordy believes that he's the last person Catherine will ever want to see. Back to Walter, Abby tries to get intimate with him, but Walter isn't able to get aroused. Later, Abby starts packing her things and decides to leave Walter after telling him that their relationship isn't working. That night, Catherine plans to head to the grocery store but hides behind her car when she sees Jordy there. She then goes home and cries. Meanwhile, Dennis calls his brother to tell him about Sylvie, but Walter brushes Dennis off as he is already depressed about Abby leaving, but soon calls Dennis again to say sorry and to encourage him to meet Sylvie. The next day, Walter bumps into Sherry in college, so they eventually end up getting intimate. On the other hand, Brady tells his parents about his football practice, but Catherine starts lecturing him about playing basketball instead, as his grandfather and Nicky used to be really talented basketball players. Dale scolds her for dismissing their son's actual interest. The scene then moves to Jordy. His father is at work, so Jordy walks into Elise's room and finds her naked. She quickly covers herself with a towel but Jordy approaches her, and they end up sleeping together. Soon, his father comes back home, and Jordy has to hide in the bathroom. His father starts getting intimate with Elise right away, and Jordy takes this chance to quietly leave the room. Later during the day, Walter tries to introduce Sherry to Dennis, but Dennis can't bring himself to meet her, so Sherry waits outside as Walter gets his brother ready for his date with Sylvie. After that, Walter goes back to the car with Sherry, who starts arguing with him about Dennis. Walter tries to explain, but Sherry is still angry and orders him to drop her back home. Meanwhile, Jordy reveals to Elise that it was his idea to steal the car, and they got into an accident because of him too, and that's why Nikki died. The following day, Walter follows Sherry after class, but tells him that she needs a break. On the other hand, Brady tries to play basketball as his mom suggested, but during that, Dale accidentally cuts his hand, so Brady heads to the kitchen to get the first aid kit. This is when his mom Mota sees him and starts screaming at him for using Nikki's basketball. Brady is hurt by this and tells her that Nikki won't ever come back to life again, even if she saves all his stuff. Hearing this, Catherine starts thinking about how wrong she was and later apologizes to Brady. However, Brady is still hurt and goes back to his room. The next day, Melissa goes to meet Jordy at his workplace, and they go to Jordy's house together. Once they're alone, Melissa confesses that even though she was dating Nikki, she missed Jordy more. They then start kissing but get interrupted as Elise enters the room, looking angry. Jordy and Melissa go to the park together the next morning, and Melissa comments that Elise was acting like she stole her boyfriend. Jordy gets irritated when he hears that and tells Melissa not to mention Elise again. Before leaving, they kiss once more. Meanwhile, Walter finally decides to visit Sherry, but when he reaches her apartment, he sees a man coming out. The man gets angry when he sees Walter and starts attacking him, but Sherry quickly steps in. She pulls Walter inside her apartment and locks the other men outside. Sherry and Walter then talk and get back together. As they enjoy some ice cream, Sherry informs Walter that she first saw him in court during the car accident case, and she was really impressed when she saw how cool and calm he looked when Catherine tried to criticize him. Walter gets put off by Sherry's insensitive comment and quickly wears his clothes and leaves. In the morning, Sylvie comes to meet Dennis, but Dennis can't face her yet. So Sylvie suggests that she can stay outside and that she and Dennis can talk through the door. So Dennis gives her a chair to sit outside while they talk. Later that afternoon, Jordy's boss orders him to clean the bathroom, but Jordy starts arguing about how he has to do all the work, and Jordy ends up quitting in anger. Melissa then drives him home so he can change his clothes. There, Elise tries to talk to him multiple times, but Jordy completely ignores her and leaves with Melissa. When he returns home late at night, he finally makes up his mind about talking to Catherine, so he calls her, and they meet the next morning. Catherine tells him that she is happy he called, but Jordy can't believe it as he still hasn't forgiven himself for what happened to Nikki. He explains that Nikki didn't want to drive a stolen car, and that's why Jordy was driving, but unfortunately, he didn't notice the car coming towards them from the side, and they crashed. Catherine assures him that it's not his fault and talks about how everyone tells her to move on, but it's impossible for her to forget her beloved son. They continue to sit together for a while and find comfort in each other. The movie then shifts to Dennis, who calls Walter to let him know that he'll be going on a date with Sylvie, but Walter doesn't say much as he is still thinking about what Sherry said before. The scene is then back to Catherine, who decides to burn all of Nikki's things so that she can move on, and she also sincerely apologizes to Brady for how she treated him. After that, she tells Brady that they will stay at his aunt's house for a while as this house only has bad memory. When Dale finds out about this, he begs her not to leave, but Catherine says that she can never forgive him for getting over their son's death like it was nothing. That evening, Walter goes to pick up Dennis, but discovers that Dennis has already left by himself. Walter then decides to face his guilt and goes to meet Catherine and apologize, but she can't stand the sight of him and starts hitting him until he leaves. Meanwhile, Jordy goes back home and discovers that Elise has told his father about them sleeping together. Enraged, his father starts beating him while he also fights back. Soon, Melissa comes to pick up Jordy, who takes all his things. The movie comes to an end as Catherine also leaves her house with Brady, while Dennis and Sylvie also seem to be having fun on their date. Thanks for watching. To support the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button and press the bell icon to get new video updates.